Computer. All right, everybody. Mid-Maryland President Tim Dell's here for our April Club meeting, virtually, obviously. We are joined today by Jay Weber, the man who's wearing a headband like me there, from Omius, Cooling Technologies. He's going to talk about these crazy headbands that you see all the pros and so many age groupers wearing now at the races, what they do, how they work, how they might be beneficial to you. And then we're going to be doing a club order for them following this. So before we dive deep into that, just a couple of things. Our next upcoming club event is this coming Saturday. That's the Tap House Trekkers Heavy Seas Bike Ride. Saturday, wheels down at 10:30 in the morning. So please be there beforehand to get yourself situated, your bike situated, and be ready because we are rolling at 10:30. We are going to have a pace group that's going to be doing 16 miles an hour, but there are cue sheets both from Strava and Ride with GPS on the club event on the website. So if you want to go out there and rip it up faster, or if you're someone who wants to ride a bit slower, you can pull cue sheets, and we'll do it ask beforehand and see if we can self-group some people so nobody's riding alone. And then afterwards, there's always a food truck and some drinks and stuff like that, so we'll hang out for a bit and make it a bit social. The next club meeting after this one, looking at my calendar, is going to be Monday, May 4th at 6 p.m. at Roadrunner Sports. That one's going to be more of a social, but we are going to be talking about different types of shoes. We get a lot of questions about those carbon-plated shoes, resin-plated shoes, what should I be wearing, zero drop, this, that, and the other. So we're going to be talking about the different types of shoes that are out there, what they're designed for, how to use them, what may make sense to use so you don't go out and buy a $300 pair of shoes that doesn't really serve you any purpose. So that'll be the first Monday in May at Roadrunner Sports from 6 to 8 p.m. That's pretty much it. So we're going to rock and roll with this with Jay. So welcome, Jay. Thanks for dialing in from Colorado.
Thank you so much for having me. Again, and thank you all for taking the time out of your very busy lives to come and listen about this weird looking cooling technology that pros and age groupers are wearing. The first thing that I always like to start with when I'm talking about Omius is that it is absolutely what we call a cooling technology. It is not a cooling headband, it's not a cooling hat, not a cooling visor. The reason for that, and it's an important distinction, is that our technology lasts forever as long as you do three things. If you go to Amazon and you type in cooling headband, you're going to get something for $29.95 that you put in the freezer, lasts for 15 minutes. On a hot Eagle Man day, it lasts for 12 minutes. And then it's trapping the heat and becomes more problematic than it was before you started. The cooling technology that we're utilizing is using what two physical properties, which is conduction and evaporative cooling. Conduction is basically pulling the heat off. If you stick your arm in ice water, that is going to get the heat, the cold going in. And as soon as you take that arm out of the ice, your hand then returns back to its normal temperature. So we're using conduction. That is as long as it's touching your skin. So if Tim, since he's growing his hair out, decides to put the headband up on top of his hair, that conduction no longer works. It's why the headband also doesn't work on the back of our heads because most people have far more hair on the back of our heads. The next physical property that it's using is what's called evaporative cooling. And that is basically getting airflow to remove the heat. Again, it's a continual ongoing process as long as you keep moving to give it airflow. So Tim's running a 6:30 mile and I'm walking a 15-minute mile. As long as we continue to both move, it is going to work very well for both of us. So a common misconception is that, oh, I'm not fast enough. That's only for the pros, right? That may be true for some technology, a disc wheel as an example. This technology works for everybody as long as you keep moving. The third and final element that is required to keep this technology working is it needs to be kept wet. Now, let's say that Tim doesn't sweat at all because he's just a beautiful human being, and I sweat buckets. Tim is going to have to add far more water than I am to continue to make it work. Now, when I say far more water, the great thing about it is it still only needs about a splash of water every 10 minutes. So if you're racing Ironman Texas, like Josh is, and the volunteer just happens to fill that cup up with just a tiny bit of water, you don't have to worry, you don't have to fret. That splash will be enough to get you to the next aid station. Now, if it's raining, 40% chance of thunderstorms on race day, more water is not a bad thing. It cannot be too wet. That being said, Josh has to bring all of his stuff in on Friday. You don't have to soak it. You don't have to put it in a tub of water. You don't have to worry about any of that. You throw it on your head the first chance you get, right? There's usually a table as you exit transition to throw a cup on. They decide not to set up that table, you're going to be fine to get to the first aid station and activate it. Similar to a sponge, you do your dishes after dinner tonight, you put the sponge up, you go down in the morning, you have breakfast. That sponge is hard as a rock. You don't have to throw the sponge away, you just have to add water to it. So if it dries between uses, you don't have to worry about constantly keeping it wet. Now, the pieces themselves are made of graphite. Graphite itself will last forever under care. Similar to Tim's $200 Oakleys, if he goes to his track session and has a terrible time, he's not hitting his 400s, and he throws his sunglasses, they're going to scratch or break. The cooling pieces in the headband are the exact same. Our cooling technology comes in a beautiful case. We've actually updated the cases now. They're no longer balsa wood, but rather hardened plastic. The volunteers are doing their best on race day. The rest of the time, it's the onus is on you. But that being said, you put the headband back in the case, put the rubber bands back on it, and that way, when they throw the 3,000 bags onto the truck to bring them and set them up, you're all set. You don't have to worry about it. Um, so it's a protective measure. The protection works, but you have to make sure you're taking care of it. The nice thing about it is that because the pieces are made of graphite, a slight rinse with fresh water after you're done with your session, hang it to dry is all you need to do. The pieces themselves are held in by a silicone grid. So that silicone grid, I'm going to bring it really close,
Keep going. There you go. Yep.
is very tight little webbing. That webbing holds the pieces in so that they can't fly out. But silicone, again, is not indestructible. So neither your headgear nor your cooling pieces should ever be put in the washing machine, the dishwasher. Just a slight rinse, a little bit of hand uh, over it will clean for cleaning purposes is all you need. I've had these cooling pieces in my headband since 2023. Again, if you take care of them, they last forever. I've used it on probably 200 runs. Um, you can use it in the basement with a fan pointed at your head should the weather become unfavorable in December, January. If you use a fan and just a light spray bottle, my family would be less than thrilled if I was pouring buckets of water over my head in the basement. So just some light spray will, and the fan will emulate that wind flow and the water needed to make it work. But we have athletes that who have taken care of them. They've had theirs longer than I have. And the pieces are still alive and well. So the graphite itself doesn't break down. It's not like a pair of carbon shoes or your tires that are on your bike, um, where it's limited number of miles before you know you have to replace them for safety purposes or effectiveness.
Well, I was gonna say you're the best hype man there is when you're talking about me being a beautiful, ideal human and running 630s and all that stuff, but then you said I had a temper tantrum and threw my glasses at the track, so um, maybe not as good of a hype man as I thought. But interesting thought, because like I have the old balsa wood one as well, and
Yep.
I hadn't had any thoughts of a full or anything, or say like a point to point 70.3 in my mind since I got one. But putting them in the bags, like that makes the concept that you can put them in loaded into the headband and just leave them in there, like that makes so much more sense. I always kind of thought it was just convenience, which I don't know if that was the original thought, but it'll allow you to keep it safe while it's in there, and then you just pull it out and drop the box back in the bag and go about your business.
Yes, sir.
Um, you were talking about evaporative cooling and kind of the science behind how it works. Um, I've gotten this question. Can you explain why there's these, obviously the grid makes it easier for putting it in the silicone, but as
Yeah.
far as why there's all these little notches and things on the pieces instead of just like a solid block?
Yeah. So the more surface area that exists, the more evaporative cooling that can happen. It's the exact same reason why your radiator has 1,000 little fins versus being a solid wall of metal to try to take the cooling and heat to dissipate the heat. So it's exactly that. By having 20 blocks with 9 pillars, there is enough, there is more surface area than if we just had 20 flat blocks.
Science for the win every time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Um,
Physics is a
Guys, if
beautiful thing.
this is an interesting discussion and it's a bit out of the ordinary. So if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll make sure to cover them. If it's something complicated, we'll obviously just unmute you and you can go right to Jay with it yourselves. So don't forget to do that. You and I were talking when we got on here before this started about like my experience with the band, and you said everybody has kind of the the basis of the experience is the same, but how people choose to use them tends to vary. Um, and what my experience was that I was wearing it in the summer. I knew I was hot. I could feel the heat on my arms and on my legs, and like I knew it was really hot out. But I didn't feel like I was running in heat, right? Like my heart rate was high, like it was hot. Everything else was saying it was hot, but I didn't feel like I was in that vacuum of hot, dense air, and I don't want to be out here running. Um, can you explain kind of how that works? Because there's been some, like some people say, well, it lowers this temperature, or it does this, or it does that, but there's
Yeah.
a certain kind of principle that you guys were chasing.
Yep, absolutely. So you hit the nail on the head. So this technology, similar to pretty much every other technology other than an ice bath, does not affect your core temperature. So if you take your temperature in any number of ways, right? Armpit under the tongue, if you're in a bad way and you're at the doctor's, rectally, right? And your core temperature is 98.6 when you start and it's 101.5 when you finish. your body core temperature will be 101.5 with or without the technology. What the technology does is what's called central governor theory. And what that dictates is that if the brain is happy, it will then control the rest of the body, right? We go into an Ironman, Josh racing on Sunday, has the nerves hitting. He knows at some point, at least once, he's going to think, this was a terrible idea. I can't believe I signed up for this, right? Everybody's going to go through that. What the central governor theory says is that if you can make your brain happy, it can then control the rest of your body. If you were able in the middle of an Ironman to consistently meditate, it would do a very similar thing. It would slow your breathing down. It would lower your heart rate, Tim, actually was probably a couple of beats lower than it normally is, right? If it was 168, it's likely your heart rate would have been 171. It's not going to be a huge difference, but it'll make a small noticeable difference. We've seen studies that say this technology lowers your heart rate by 4 to 7 beats a minute. No change in temperature, but so it depends on where you are on the scale.
Well,
Some
and
people see,
and from a coaching standpoint, 4 to 7 beats is roughly the variation that happens with humidity, right? Heat and humidity, right?
yep,
Most people's heart rates, normal train, like for effort escalation, is normally, some people say 3 to 5, 5 to 8, so kind of right there in that same range. So if you're pulling it down those back within that same range, you're almost like canceling out the negative impact of the heat.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Huh.
Um, so, but the central governor theory is really important to the ability to stay controlled on training sessions and on race days. Now, one of the other things that Tim and I were talking about before we got started is that he likes to use it on race day because he wants to feel like he's heat acclimating. This is not changing your ability to acclimate to the heat because, as he said, his skin still felt hot. He knew he was hot. He truly was hot, right? So he's developing more blood plasma. All the physiological things of heat are still happening. What it's doing, though, is because it's making your brain happy, it allows you to still hit your quality set, the quality of your session that the goal is. If it's a zone 2 2-hour run, you're no longer now worried about creeping up into zone 3. If you're trying to do intervals on the track, your 20 by 400s or your 15 by 800s, you can still focus on those because your brain is in a better place than it would have been.
Right. That's awesome. Going to pick up a couple quick questions here.
Yeah.
Um, Regular member David, he's giving you way too much credit here, but I know you. I know you know the people in charge. He said, "How did you?" But how did the creators come up with the idea of this?
So our founder is a Mexican Israeli who is getting his master's at the basically Monterrey Technological Institute in Monterrey, Mexico. It's insanely hot and humid there. And as a double major of physics and material sciences, he was looking at ways for the body to cool. At some point, clothing becomes a limiter. So, despite the advances in fabrics and threads and you know barriers, at some point there is still a limit, right? Unfortunately, we cannot comfortably or legally do an Ironman or triathlon with no clothing at all. But if we're not trapping heat in, we need to find ways to remove the heat. And so by having the most minimal amount of material on the skin, that allows us to remove the heat. Now, the face has the something like 360 glands per cubic centimeter of sweat glands. It's one of the highest sweat areas in on the body. it also is the most responsive to cooling for the brain. And basically, the founder looked at an XY axis, the weight of materials compared with their ability to conduct heat off. So you have materials like titanium that conduct a ton of heat, but they're heavy. Like I have a titanium mountain bike, and it I think weighs twice what my gravel bike does, not even including the shocks, right? So we'd be running around like this. Aluminum is not nearly as conductive. You throw a soda can or pop, whatever people call it, in the fridge, it cools off pretty quickly because it's so thin walled. And so it's lightweight, but it doesn't conduct. Graphite was kind of that perfect median of lightweight with conductivity working for it. And so that's it. He started this project in 2013, and we came out with our beta project, our beta at Ironman Cozumel in 2018. So it took 5 years of designing it, developing it. To Tim's point, all of the external extra surface area with the pillars to make it more effective.
Awesome. Jen wanted to know, and we didn't get into the weed, into the weeds on products, which we'll get into shortly. She wanted to know, how do you manage sun protection, right? Because we were
Yep.
both showing headbands. Will a hat or sunscreen interfere with its efficacy and efficiency?
So that's a great question. So the hat, if you wear, so we do make a hat. If you have your favorite CLA running hat, um, then in that instance, you need to make sure that you have a large enough forehead. So if you're in love with your hat, right, and I'm just going to grab a random hat, it has to sit up high, right? You can't pull it down, and you certainly can't put the hat over the cooling pieces because it's then no longer getting airflow. So you either have to have the hat way up high. And Christian Hogenhog, back when we first came out with our product and we only had a hat, or sorry, only had a headband, he would wear a hat on top. He has a large enough head that it was able to work. If you're a smaller individual, you would have to balance it just right. Sunscreen, this is sun protective because you're covering up the skin entirely. So, but if you're putting sunblock up above the headband itself and you sweat and it comes down under the uh, the cooling pieces, it is not going to break or damage the uh, efficacy of the cooling pieces themselves.
All right. And then can you show, Adam wanted to see, I know you said they changed them to plastic. Can you show the case one more time, like kind of how it works and open it up? Oh, professional Jay Weber. Ah,
So the pieces go in. So the pieces come the opposite of how Tim is showing it.
yep.
When you put it in the headband, you now no longer have to take the pieces out of your headband. You then just put it in exactly how he has, and you're protected with the pieces in the headband forever.
All right. And Art wants to know, does the headband work also as a sweatband? Obviously, you have the graphite there, but the rest of the headband, does that work to counter like sweat in the eyes and that kind of stuff?
So, yes, in two different ways, and we're going to get a little more into the weeds again. So, there is a light um, hydrophilic coating. So, for those of you that know a little bit to be dangerous about wetsuits, wetsuits have a hydrophobic coating. They push water away. It's what makes you fast in the water, or at least faster. I'm never going to be fast in the water, but I'm faster with a wetsuit. And the hydrophobic coating is what part of it that helps, right? If you're wearing just a tri-kit, it's absorbing the water, it's pulling on it, it's not helping push it away. This has a hydrophilic coating. So in the previous example where I sweat a ton and Tim doesn't, the pieces are absorbing the sweat. Now, similar to a halo headband as well, for those of you that might have one of those for cycling, the graphite pieces also act as a channel. So whatever can't be absorbed by the pieces gets diverted to the outside of your eyes. So it does very much act like a sweatband, only a sweatband, if you sweat heavy enough, has to be taken off and wrung out. This does not have that instance of needing that.
Right. Keep these questions coming, guys. These are great. So I did a quick show there of the website. I will pull it up again just so that people can kind of see a bit of the offerings. And you and I were talking about this. So Omius does the headband, like you and I were showing. They also do a visor. They do a hat, and then you guys also have a backwards cap formation, right? Like wearing your hat backwards.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Yeah. So if you're wearing the hat a hat backwards, we've sewn the silicone grid into the this part of it so that it still sits on the front.
and
Um,
is that adjustable, kind of like a normal hat, or how does that work with
no,
the grid
no,
kind of being there?
it's a fitted cap. We offer it in two different sizes. The small cap is for head sizes up to 54 centimeters in circumference, and the medium large cap is for uh, between 56 and 58. And if you're right on the border or you're in between, you should size up because what you don't want to do is compress the blood vessels in your head to disallow the cooling of the blood flow.
Okay. Let's see. Mary says, okay. I borrowed Tim's for my recent Hawaii trip, which I told you about. She said
Mhm.
she wore it once, but didn't feel a difference. Today, she's learning that this thing had to be watered. So, Mary works in landscaping, so that's a good way to remember it there, Mary.
Yeah.
Um, just one detail, and I'm not sure it made all the difference. Do you have to water it if you sweat a lot?
So sweating a lot is hard to judge, especially in Hawaii. Everybody's going to sweat a lot. Um, my guess is that it was not getting enough if you didn't water it at all. So every 10 to 15 minutes, a splash of water out of your hand bottle would have made all the difference in the world. Um, Another element of that is that it's going to feel cool when you first put it on.
Yep.
After about 20 to 30 minutes, your neuroreceptors are going to adapt to what cooling is happening. It is still very much working. So, Mary, while you didn't feel it working, it actually was still working. If the cooling sensation is what you're truly going for, a simple shift back side to side will reset those neurotransmitters or neuroreceptors rather to adapt and feel the cool again.
I noticed that when I was messing with mine last summer, that it was like you said, it's almost like in a more common sense way of saying it, like it just felt normal being there. And
Yeah.
then when I moved it just a little bit, I went, "Ooh, the graphite's cold again." Right? Like
Yes.
it was bizarre, and it was just such a small movement, but it felt totally different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, All right. While we're letting some people chew on some other questions and stuff like that, one thing we are doing for this, guys, is talking with Jay. So we're going to do a MMTC group order for these for anybody that's interested. Obviously, most tech in triathlon is not cheap, and we know that. But we work, Jay and I work together and to come up with some pricing to kind of help offset that. And we're also going to do custom headbands for anybody who wants the headbands. We're going to do some MMTC headbands, which he sent me the graphic on, and it is that guy right there. So we'll have the MMTC logos across the back of it. No additional charge for that, of course. But you're also not going to be limited to just the headband. If you decide you want a hat or the backwards cap or anything like that, we could still order that with our pricing. but it'll be kind of in their stock colors that they have available on the site, just because the minimums for the bigger items are pretty high, and we know this is kind of a specialty item, so we didn't want to offer something that then we couldn't potentially deliver. Let me pull up his sheet here on my screen so that I can get the pricing correct. So the headbands, if you're someone like Odessa or myself who already have these and you just want to get in on the custom headbands, they are normally $25, but the club cost is going to be $17.50 for a headband. If you're looking at buying them new, let me pull that because that's in a different thing than he sent me. A headband with the cooling pieces, so the complete set like this, is going to be $156.80, where they're normally like $225. So it's a pretty big pretty big bite out of the MSRP there for you guys. If you already have one and you need some replacement, the replacement cubes, the graphite, they come in 4-packs, because if you were to drop one or something like that, and it might crack or break, those are usually $40, but our price is going to be $28. The way we're going to do it is we're going to do one big order. This is how we can get the best pricing. So we'll send out an email blast and stuff like that for anybody that's interested. You'll place the order through us. The club will collect the money, do all that kind of stuff, and then we'll pay Jay that way. It helps with y'all's pricing because you're not paying the shipping and you're not paying the taxes. You're not paying all the additional stuff. We're just going to, as a group order, we'll be able to lower that.
Any discounts on visors?
Yeah,
Yes.
everything. You guys get a discount on everything. We're just not doing custom visors, but
Okay.
the visors themselves, Tim will share all the pricing, but
Yep.
the caps have discounted pricing. The cap bundles have discounted pricing, the visors, and then the visor bundles. And that being said, the pieces are put in individually. So to Tim's point, you can buy replacement packs. What you can also do what, as Tim just said, for him and Odessa is if you want just a headband, you can take the pieces out and put them in the headband. So should you say, I'm not sure whether I'm going to want a hat or a headband, you don't have to buy two sets of pieces. You only need one set of pieces, regardless of how many different headgear items you choose to have.
So like you could, which this is what I'll do because I have a headband. Obviously, I'll order an MMTC one, but knowing about the backwards cap, I'm gonna buy just the reverse cap. Which like he was saying, we get the discounts on everything, and for that, for example, the normal MSRP is $35. Our price is going to be $24.50, and then I can choose whether I want to put them in my headband or my cap. So I effectively will have two units, depending on what you want to do. One question Jeannie asked is, once the order closes,
Yep.
because with it being a group order, we're going to have a window open, which we'll hash out the details on when that closes. But once it's closed and I give it to you, roughly how long does that take?
3 to 4 weeks, you'll have it in hand.
Okay.
So the custom headbands are pretty quick. So we kind of go with 3 to 4 weeks. We usually beat that, but depending on how busy the schedule gets with custom, it could be up to 4 weeks.
Okay, so then what we'll do, that actually helps. What we'll do is we'll open this order once I get this video edited up and can share it out to the group, which will probably be tomorrow. And we'll run the order through the end of April. So that'll give everybody basically 2 weeks to decide. Then we'll place the order at the end of April, and we should have it by the end of May. So anybody that's doing those June races like Eagle Man, Happy Valley, that kind of stuff, will have time to get those to who they need to get them distributed appropriately.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any other questions, guys, while we're chatting?
My only concern would be is that we definitely have to have them by the first week of June, just for those. I mean, I wouldn't buy it if it wouldn't be ready. If I couldn't have it in hand by Eagle Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll close it on the, what is it gonna, this is April, so the 30th of April, we'll close it. I'll submit it to him that night, whatever that is, so that he has it first thing the next day and can get the order processed.
Because Eagle Man is the first weekend in June,
Second,
right?
second
Second.
weekend.
Oh, it's the second weekend? Oh,
Yep.
perfect.
Yeah, it's
So-
But
second
we
weekend.
need at least a week to distribute, I would think.
Yeah,
Yeah, and if anybody's in a time crunch, we can, if it's like, well, somebody can't make a club meeting, whatever, we can just ship them. That's not going to be a big deal. We'll sort that out.
But yeah.
And I'll be at Eagle Man, and I'll be there days beforehand, so I can also bring them to Eagle Man because I'll be there doing talks and stuff. So,
But yeah, me having it in hand to ship to you, and I'll be shipping it from Indianapolis too. So that's like a day to get to you,
Yeah.
Tim. But yeah, you should have it way early in June.
awesome. Do we have any other questions? You guys are kind of easy. Anything we missed, Jay?
No, I think I talked more than enough. So yeah,
All
I
right.
think
Well, like I said, we did record this. I'll get this edited up tomorrow, and we'll get it out in the email blast and post it in the Facebook group so we can get it to everybody. And we'll start taking those orders right away. Once that goes out, we'll close the store on April 30th, and then I will get that stuff over to you, Jay, so that we can get it processed and rocking and rolling, so that we can have them for Eagle Man, Happy Valley, kind of as the East Coast season ramps up in June.
Yeah.
It was good to catch up with you, buddy. It's, we got to catch up last year for the first time in over a decade, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking some time out of your evening and from the family and everything to do this for us. Any parting words, sir?
No, I really appreciate all of your time. I know it's 2 hours later for you guys, so I appreciate your time even more. And if you have any questions, feel free to send them to Tim. If he doesn't know the answer, he can forward it to me. So, anybody either watching this after the fact who is not able to ask questions live right now, or someone who is live right now that comes up with a question afterwards, just send it to Tim, and Tim can collect them and send them to me and then distribute as you see fit. Because I'm guessing that usually when one person has a question, other people might have had it too. So
Definitely, and I just put the my email in the chat here, guys. Obviously, president at midmdtriclub.org. Send those over, and either myself or Jay will get them answered for you. He's obviously far more well versed than I am, and we'll get this group order together, and we'll get everybody fashionable and feeling cool for summer here in the Mid Atlantic.
awesome.
All right, hey, everybody turn your cameras on real quick if you can, because we're going to do a screen cap for a selfie day with Jay here so that we can make it to his social media, and we'll feel famous and stuff.
Perfect.
So we'll wait like a minute here, and we'll end the recording, and I'll screen cap that, and I'll send it over to you, buddy.
Awesome.
All right, most people in their cars and hiding and, in closets because dinner's ready and that kind of stuff. All right, everybody. 1, 2, 3. All right, good enough for us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys.